Well, this is the last episode of The Expanse, Babylon's Ashes, and then there are no more.
No.
I know, it's a terrible place to be. However, this episode was really, really good. I was sad to see that some threads were left dangling, but maybe we'll get lucky and there will be a movie in the future that deals with some of that stuff. We start out on Laconia. Yep, that little boy that had all the protomolecule in his eyes, that definitely turned into a pet cemetery situation. The little girl brought him home, and the parents freaked out. Dad picked up a knife and cut the kid, and then shoved him into a closet and locked the door. And then he called the soldiers to come. The little girl, she ran out into the forest, but then she doubled back, let her brother out, and they went running off into the forest together. And that was the last we saw of them, so who knows what's going to happen there. It's unfortunate that we don't get to find out. I guess maybe if we read the books, that might answer the questions. However, from what I understand, there were some things that were definitely changed from the books for the TV show. So I'm not sure exactly how well things match up, but I guess I'm just going to have to read the books and find out.
Dad had a point, though. The son certainly was different. When he did cut the son's, he cut him in the palm, I think it was.
Yeah, he cut him on the hand.
And then his hand was healing back up, and then the boy was running away with his sister. You saw it through his eyes, and it looked very similar to when the protomolecule stuff of Miller and all that from the earlier seasons was happening, so it's definitely that thing.
Well, I mean, that kid, I can't remember his name, the one that Mai was with, that doctor was doing the experiments on, Prax's daughter.
Yeah.
When we saw through the eyes of the boy that she was friends with, when he was turning into something else due to the protomolecule, that's what he saw. So, yeah, it does not bode well. Because that kid, when he walked in the door, he was moving in a really creepy fashion. I could definitely see why the parents were freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
That was bad. However, I mean, I will say, if you didn't want things like that happening, you shouldn't be on that planet screwing around with the protomolecule. You leave your kids open for that kind of stuff. What do you think is going to happen?
I did find it interesting because as we've been talking about the planet, I've been calling them wolves. And the little girl, I guess, called them dogs, so take that for what it's worth.
I was calling them cats, so I guess I'll live with dogs. That's fine. The next thing we saw was Drummer and the Rossi crew and Avasarala and those representatives of the UNN and the MCRN all in a room trying to plan their battle with Marco Inaros. And it was interesting because one of the Martians was giving Drummer a hard time, and Avasarala basically told him to shut up because, that's the kind of shit that got them where they currently were. This constant bickering and sniping at each other instead of working together. So that was nice to see. It was determined that they were going to split their forces. One group was going to attack what they thought was Marco and his fleet, or his ship and some of his other ships. Another group was going to attack another group of his ships. And then the third, the Rossi, was going to make an assault on the ring station where those railguns were and point the railguns at Medina Station.
And I think the strategy was if Marco fled back, if he retreated back to the ring, that those railguns were going to take his fleet out that was retreating back.
Yeah. On the Pella, we saw Filip being reinstated into his previous position by Marco's first in command. Marco also referenced that there might be something else, some help coming from Laconia, which later, as it turns out, Duarte, that Martian who had been talking to Kara at her brother's funeral, he basically told Marco to go screw himself. Don't
call back.
Yeah, don't try to contact us. Don't try to come here. We'll shoot you out of the sky kind of stuff. And basically told him, thanks for helping us. your services are no longer required, and just dismissed him.
And Marco had that look on his face of what the hell?
Yeah, it was great. So yeah, so I mean that certainly helped Marco's defeat in the end. So that was nice to see.
Yeah, because there's something something's being built above that planet where the little girl is, right?
Well, I mean, there's some sort of ship that is definitely infected with protomolecule.
Blue stuff all on it.
Yeah, and I think that's what they were using to try to contact other intelligent life, especially... I mean, I'm just assuming this, but I think that they were trying to contact either the Ring Builders or whoever it was that defeated the Ring Builders. And just the way Duarte was talking, it kind of sounded like they were trying to lure those creatures to them so that they could kill them. I'm not really sure what all that's about, and obviously, since this was the last episode, we're not going to find out anytime soon. Mm-hmm. Again, unless we pick up a book and start to read. So that was... I mean, I guess it's okay to leave some strings just hanging like that for, a possible future movie or something like that, or just things that we just never are meant to know. But, I mean, it's still disappointing because these, from the very beginning, one of the questions that I've been asking is, where did the protomolecule come from? Who actually created it? And we never get the answer to that.
When that Martian guy was talking to Marco, when he was basically saying, buzz off, didn't he say something like, we've got gods to take on now or something
gods
like
to
that?
Kill.
Yeah.
I mean, that's led me to believe that they're trying to lure those guys there. Whoever created the stuff or whoever killed the builders in the first place. I think they are going to attack them when they show up. And that doesn't sound like a good idea, but okay. I don't think anything that they were doing there on Laconia was a good idea, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised that they're planning something even stupider.
It does make you wonder, Laconia, what is that? I mean, it's not just a colony. There's stuff going on there. So is that like a science base or what's going on there? I don't think it's just a normal colonization plant.
No, it appeared to be all scientists there, for the most part, scientists and soldiers. Again, I mean, that Martian guy, Duarte... I am not really sure what his goal was. I think his goal was just protecting humans, or at least his idea of who the good humans were. I think that he was trying to do what he thought was right in trying to lure the other creatures there, whoever created the protomolecule or defeated those people. I think the scientists there, I mean, I just assumed that some of them were Belters who had been working at Ganymede or something like that. I think some of those people were there trying to see if the protomolecule would be useful in terraforming. Probably people who were also maybe Martians who had gotten tired of waiting for the terraforming to be completed on Mars, to see if the protomolecule would help with that. So, I mean, I can understand what they thought they were doing. At the same time, though, why would you bring children there? What is wrong with you?
Yeah, it was hard to understand what they were doing on that colony. Clearly they were doing some shenanigans, but bringing children there just seemed... I mean, I guess they just relocated their families there so they could work and have their families there too, but I don't know. I didn't quite get a good understanding of exactly how that setup there on Laconia was working.
Well, yeah, I mean, because again, like I said after a previous episode, if this was a protomolecule planet, I wouldn't just let my kids run around free in the woods or anything like that. That's just asking for trouble, and trouble found them.
Well, it kind of brings more questions, because at the beginning of this season, having that little girl walk around like that, all by herself, and I mentioned, it was a shame we didn't get to see the colonization of this planet and them experiencing the life on the planet. But if it turns out this was a science setup to begin with, then they should have known what they were dealing with on this planet, or at least some of it. So why would you let your children run around like that? I mean, I don't know if that's... Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's a plot problem with the writers. Maybe this is a slight change from what the books had, or maybe the books explain better, why the kids were just allowed to just run around like that. Because if this is all basically a protomolecule science station, I sure as heck wouldn't have my kids running around there.
No. Or even if it's just a planet that's through the ring that's new, and they didn't do anything to terraform it or anything like that, I still wouldn't just let my kids run around in the woods like that. You don't know what's out there. You just got there. Nobody else has ever been there either. So what the hell are you doing?
Well, clearly it got them clearly there were problems on that planet that they should have known about but didn't.
Yeah. So that was stupid. Now, we did find out that Clarissa, right after we had a very nice moment between Naomi and Clarissa, where Naomi actually took some of Amos's duties and gave them to Clarissa. To me, it felt like that was her way of apologizing, or at least saying that we're cool and you're now part of the crew.
Yeah, she'll accept her as part of the crew.
Yeah. So, that was a really nice moment. But then, a few seconds later, we see Clarissa collapsing. She takes herself to sickbay, and we find out that she has complex endocrine collapse syndrome, for which there is no treatment, and she's got a maximum of 5 years left. And if she uses her mods, she could just drop dead. That doesn't look good for her, which is really too bad. Because, when talking to Holden, Naomi tells him that, Clarissa, she appears to be trying to make up for all the blood on her hands. That's what she had hoped for Filip. So Naomi, when she looks at Clarissa and how Clarissa's trying to make up for what she did, she sees Filip. Then we got into the battle between the Inner Forces and Drummer's faction and Marco's Free Navy. Starting with UNN Battle Group 1, we see that Avasarala is not in the rear. She is actually in the front leading the charge, like a real leader would be. So that was really cool. She is one ass-kicking lady, and I really love seeing strong women like that represented, who aren't just written as bitches, but are written as intelligent, capable leaders. So that was really good to see. They thought they had located the Pella and that they were going after Marco Inaros, but it turned out that it was just a decoy, and Drummer's group, who thought they were actually going after a freighter, it turned out that the Pella had been disguised as a freighter. And when the freight started falling away, unfortunately the Pella was underneath, and they decimated the Drummer's Belter group, which was really, it was bad. Drummer survived, but most of her group didn't. One of her, I guess, I don't know if we want to call him a lieutenant of hers or just a friend. Because
of that friend that from earlier in the season, remember they met up?
Yeah.
And they kind of formed an alliance, so I think it was that guy.
Yeah, I don't remember what his name was, though, which is really too bad, because I thought he was pretty cool.
Well, after her ship was disabled in the battle, she was going to, they had very little weapons left. Their reactor was barely working, and so Drummer was going to ram the Pella, or at least that was her plan.
Yeah, even with a big hole in the side of her ship right next to her, she was going to do a kamikaze and do a suicide run at Marco's ship. But her friend, he was dying, and he beat her to it.
He was on a different ship.
Yeah, he was on a different ship. His own ship. He did it. He
Well, his ship got destroyed before he got completely there, but enough of his ship made it to their ship where, at least that's how I interpreted the visuals, that, because it looked like...
He was dead before that even happened.
Yeah, because a ship came around with their guns and they took out the ship, but I think the debris...
Yeah, it was a large piece of the debris hit the Pella. Marco's first officer, Rosenfeld, she was killed. She died right in front of Filip, and Filip kept calling for help, and nobody came. When he told Marco that Rosenfeld had died, Marco didn't even really seem affected by that. He just said, well, it's too bad because she would have been a good leader for Medina Station. So at that point, Filip, it seemed that he finally really understood what was going on, because he just flat out asked his father, how do you basically live with all the people that you've killed? Just all the blood on his hands. His father just shrugged it off. He told him the greatest gift any true Belter could wish for is to die fighting for the cause. And Filip just flat out asked him, for the cause or for you? Which I thought was a really good... It was a good moment for Filip, because it was clear that he finally really understood what was going on there. And, Marco responded, you still can't see what you've been given. And Filip said back to him, I do now. So, they went out back out to where the rest of the crew was.
Well, I think that, before that, if I'm remembering, didn't he say something like, something about choice.
That we chose this life or something like that. And
Filip questioned, like, choice? Like, when did I have a choice?
And Filip didn't have a choice. His father chose this for him. It obviously certainly wasn't what his mother would have chosen for him, since she left early on after Marco tricked her into killing all those people. She didn't want this for Filip, but it was Marco forced him into it. So they went out to where the rest of the crew was on the Pella. His father was giving another one of his rallying speeches, and then they were chanting, and Filip was just sitting there with this blank look on his face. And
he was kind of looking around going, okay.
It was clear he no longer wanted to be there. He didn't believe in this cause anymore. It was obvious that he had had enough. So after that, we see the Rocinante. Their goal was to take over Medina Station by using the railguns in the on the ring.
Yeah, they were supposed to assault the railguns in the ring and take them over so then they could turn them against Medina, and then if Marco came back into the ring, they could point those railguns at him.
Yeah, that was the plan anyway. Unfortunately, while they were trying to take the ring station, they wound up disabling the railguns, so their plan was not going to work anymore.
And the thing is, that assault scene on the railgun, that lasted, at least 5 minutes. I don't honestly know how long. This whole episode just flew by. But it was a really cool scene. They had a bunch of people on the Rocinante, and they were in these...
No. They were on the was it Giambattista?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they were on the Giambattista, the ice hauling ship.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, so it was like all these little pods that were a lot like the FedEx breaching containers that they had. Yeah, when Miller was still on the show. And it was funny because Amos said he felt like he was trapped in a portable toilet, because you can always count on Amos to point out something obvious like that.
Yep.
In a very hilarious way. That was great.
But the scene, the whole assault on those railguns, because there was a lot of resistance. They had belters that were coming in, I guess. They're coming in from Medina. They were kind of coming in from above, and they had armor-piercing weaponry. And, it was a really intense battle scene. Yeah. Even when they were landing, because their pods were being picked off at a higher rate than they were expecting.
Yeah, by the railguns.
And the way they came in, and they had their, rockets, I guess, underneath their seats that they were trying to... Like, the whole assault team, like, that was a really, really cool scene. And then when they were on the station, I guess it's the platform.
The station.
And they were going in to try to take out the railguns, or take over the railguns, excuse me. Like, that was a really intense battle scene. So I'm not doing it justice by explaining it, but it was a really good scene if you like action scenes and you like just space battle stuff. So no way to really explain it because you just have to watch it. But there was a lot going on in that battle scene, and it was very intense and confusing about what was happening, which you would expect in a war scene like that. Yeah. So it was a very good scene to watch. So if you like that kind of battle stuff.
Yeah. And when it became clear that they were grossly outnumbered and there was no way they were going to be able to take over the railguns, Bobby just... she jumped out of the place where they were hiding, and she decided that she was just going to destroy that power source, and she was going to put a stop to those guns. That meant that she was alone out there, and the Belters were able to just concentrate their fire on her.
She was in her
battle suit.
Martian battle suit, so it was able to take a lot of damage, but yeah, they eventually got her down.
Yeah. And Amos went out there after her, and that was actually a really cool scene where he was trying to shield her body with his.
And then all of a sudden, all the firing stopped, and then he looked up and he saw the Rocinante out there, and we didn't get to see it, but I'm guessing they took their guns and they pegged all those Belter people that were trying to take them out from the sky. They must have blew all those people away.
Oh yeah, that must be exactly what happened. So yeah, that would have been interesting to watch as well. Yeah, so then they were trying to figure out, okay, well, this plan isn't going to work anymore because we didn't take over the railguns. We actually disabled them, and we're not going to be able to use them now to point at Medina or to aim at Marco when he arrives. So what they did was Naomi actually determined that they would send the Giambattista back through the ring, rigged to explode, and to fire everything they had at the ring at the precise time that Marco was going to be coming through, in order to go above the maximum
threshold for
Yeah.
those entities to open up
the
spaces.
maximum energy threshold. Yeah, and awaken the entities that
because they were all that was left was just the Rocinante, and they weren't going to be a match for what weapons they had left for what was getting ready to come through the ring with Marco.
Yeah, because Avasarala's group wasn't going to be able to get there in time. Drummer's group was decimated, so they were on their own. And it was really a really good plan.
And Naomi, she set the things up to remote detonate. You saw a flashback of her when she was younger with Filip when he was a boy, because she knew by destroying that, and if her plan if the plan worked, that her son would die along with the rest of the people on that ship, on the Pella.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, that was a rough moment, because she thought her son was dying along with Marco and the rest of his crew. That was actually a pretty cool scene when he died, because sure enough, those entities did awaken.
Yeah, he was yelling, "Veer off!" And then all this red stuff just took over his ship.
Yep, it was too late. Yeah, and that was the end of Marco and Inaros.
Well, the end of him as we know him. I don't know what happens when they go through that place.
Yeah, exactly. So who knows? We don't know if he was eaten or transported someplace else, or what the hell happens there. Well, that's the end of the problems he's going to be causing in the belt for a while, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And after that, we see we see Drummer and Holden and Avasarala and representatives from Mars, and the woman that was in charge of Ceres Station. They're all...
Belter.
Yeah, a Belter. They're all sitting around this table on Ceres, trying to figure out what they're going to do going forward as far as a transportation union.
Because the ring is a portal that you go through, and then you can go off to... it's kind of like a wormhole, and you can go off to other star systems. So by going through the ring that's in our solar system, that's a doorway to go off to all that. They don't have interstellar travel in the Expanse via their own engine, so they only can do inside the solar system with their fusion engines. So the ring is their way of doing interstellar travel through basically like a wormhole.
Earth and Mars didn't want the belt in charge, and the belt didn't want the inners in charge. So it was just going around and around till Avasarala got the idea to make Holden the president of this new group.
There was a good scene, because if I'm remembering the argument correctly, is they were trying to make it this group that was talking about how this was going to be handled. And I think it was they were proposing 3 votes, one for Mars, one for Earth, and one for the belt. And Drummer pointed out that, well, that still doesn't work for her because they're always going to lose the votes 2 to 1.
To the inners, yeah.
And so she suggested that we get the belt gets 2 votes. But Avasarala wasn't going for that. And then there was a bunch of discussion about, it was an interesting discussion, Avasarala tried to calm Drummer down by saying, well, just trust me on this. You have my word that we'll treat you with respect, the belt with respect. And then Drummer replied back with similar well, I promise you that Earth and will be treated with respect. You don't seem to believe that. Why is your word good to take at face value but not mine? The exchange between those two was better put than what I'm stating here. But it was a really good point that Drummer was making, was that the way Avasarala and Mars was setting this up is the belt was going to get screwed over again.
Yeah.
When Avasarala proposed the neutral third party,
mm-hmm.
it had to be somebody that helped out both Earth, Mars, and the belt, and was shown to be, a fairly neutral party. And then they were sitting at this big table, and everybody looked at Holden when that was, that statement was being proposed about it needs to be somebody neutral who's helped everybody. Mm-hmm. And then like Holden was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, because he didn't really want it, but then he said he'd do it. And then it cuts to him giving a speech as the first president of the transport union, and his first act as president was to resign and make... Well,
first Drummer, he was going to be president. He appointed Drummer as the vice president. Mm-hmm. And then, go ahead.
Yeah, and his first act as president was to resign and make Drummer president. And Avasarala was so angry. But, then he pointed out that, this is the only way that this could ever work.
Yep, you needed a belter in charge of that.
Yeah.
Somebody you could trust. Now, you can trust Drummer. Not all the belters you can trust, but Drummer was somebody you could trust.
Yeah, because at first, Avasarala, she was going to fight this and just, everything she always did, fight back, try to get her way. And Holden pointed out that was not the answer. I mean, she eventually acquiesced to what he said, and she just said, "I hope you're right." So that was a good scene. So I really hope that she sticks with her word and she doesn't try to do anything
undermine that.
Mm-hmm. No underhanded actions to try to undermine the situation. I really hope that she actually stands by what she just said, that she was just going to go along with it.
As I was watching that scene with Holden, and we're going off on a side tangent again, so hang on, everybody. It reminded me of this season we're in now with Star Trek Discovery. Remember when Michael Burnham was on Navarre, and they were having a disagreement very similar to this about...
Yes.
I'm trying to remember the exact specifics, but it was like...
It was trying to get Navarre back into the Federation, and they wanted an easy out clause from joining up, and the Federation's like, no, we're not going to do that.
You can't just leave when you want, which was stupid anyway, because you can leave whenever you want.
What the hell?
But the difference is, in that Star Trek Discovery scene, the solution is Michael Burnham, on her own, suggests, well, I'll be the third party. Mm-hmm. I'll do this. I'll be your third party you can go to. Whereas with the Expanse, Holden is like, first of all, it wasn't even his suggestion in that scene where everybody turned to him, and he was like, whoa, no. Again, this points out, it's a very similar setup. And with Star Trek Discovery, it was ham-fisted. Michael Burnham's got to be the most important person in the universe every single time. She tries to pretend she's modest, but she's not. That character is not modest at all. But with Holden, he was modest. I mean, he was like looking around surprised when everybody started staring at him because he didn't want this. In fact, he, said, maybe I'd be interested in this, but I've got to get some assurances in writing. Like, even then he was like, well, I'm still not sure about this. So I just wanted to point that out, that this scene with Holden was very similar to this season with Michael Burnham and Navarre. The solutions were the same. A neutral third party was going to be administrating the thing. But the way they were set up, you had one person that suggested herself, or I don't remember how that went. Maybe she didn't suggest herself. I think she suggested like there'd be a third party, and then maybe the president suggested it was Michael Burnham that would be... I mean, I don't remember the specifics, but it just came across like this was just appointed so Michael Burnham could do it. And she's like, yeah, of course I'll do it because I'm super awesome. Whereas when this was set up for Holden to do this, he didn't see it coming to begin with. It wasn't his idea, and he was reluctant to even think about it. And then at the end, he didn't end up doing it anyway because he's like, well, I shouldn't be in charge of this anyway. It needs to be somebody else. It needs to be a belter. Yeah. So anyway, just small side tangent. I don't know if you have anything to say about the similarities there.
Well, yeah, again, it just comes back to The Expanse is just a so much better thought out and written show than Star Trek Discovery. Again, it comes back to what I've been saying. I don't think that these writers on Discovery actually understand how things should work. That those who make the best heroes and leaders are the people who aren't seeking it. It's thrust upon them, and they rise to the occasion.
Yep.
Whereas in Star Trek Discovery, I mean, it's so forced. They shoehorn Michael Burnham into all of these situations, and of course, she's more than happy to be the chosen one or whatever they think she is. And it comes across as so shallow. It's just terrible. I mean, it's just crap.
And even at the end of this Expanse episode, Holden was with Naomi, and they were talking about this decision. I forget if it was Naomi or Holden, but one of them said, I think it was Naomi said, I hope you were right about this. Like, there were still doubts about
No, it was Holden.
Was it Holden?
Yeah, because Holden said to Naomi that he hoped he was right about this, and Naomi told him, you were. Mm-hmm. Because obviously she is a belter, and he was right to...
So even with his decision, he was questioning whether he made the right decision.
Yeah.
Unlike Michael Burnham, who...
is always sure of everything
she's always the bestest at everything, and she never has any real doubts.
Even when she's 100% wrong.
Yeah.
They write her as she's correct. I mean, that show is such a train wreck. I don't understand how anybody can watch that and think it's good.
I don't get it either. I get liking to have, and we talked about this during the show, this Expanse episode when we were watching. I get the idea of we'd like to have more female and people of color in positions, but in Star Trek Discovery, it's so shoehorned in that it doesn't work. It comes across like it's a piece of propaganda. Mm-hmm. But we were talking about this in The Expanse, especially this last season. I think I know there are more female characters than male. And it's fine for me. Why? Because they're all interesting characters. If you go through our reviews for this season, most of the characters we're talking about are female. And they're actually, a lot of them are female people of color.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because these are interesting characters. It doesn't matter that they're female or that they're people of color. It's just, they're good characters. Whereas with Star Trek Discovery, it's just all shoehorned in. It's like some child balling up their fists and just banging on a piano when you watch Star Trek Discovery.
Well, because there's no real depth to it.
No.
And again, I mean, if it's written by somebody who lacks depth, you're not going to get any depth in the story. That's just the way it is. Speaking of depth to the story, let's get back to The Expanse here. Toward the very end, we're back on the Pella, right when Marco was giving his rousing speech.
And before he retreated back to the ring.
Yep. We see Filip there, sitting there, feeling all uncomfortable while everybody is all chanting around him in support of his father. We see Filip just stand up, have somebody else take over his position. He goes to, it looked like it was one of the ships that was being used maintenance, a maintenance ship. Mm-hmm. We see him get in the ship and leave, and he types in the new ownership of the ship, and it says Filip Nagata.
Yeah, he took his mom's last name.
Yep, he took his mother's last name, and that act saved his life, choosing to leave his father at that point in time, because it was right after that Marco died going through the ring. So, I mean, it appears that Naomi doesn't know that her son is out there and alive. However, it was good to see that Filip finally seemed to understand what his father truly was, this horrible cult leader, essentially. And this was just narcissistic behavior all about him.
Because it wasn't even about the cause.
No.
Because when they were at the table, Holden and the group, before they drafted him into being the president of this trade union, or travel union, excuse me, Holden even mentioned something like, Inaros did some horrible things, but, he was right in the fact that he tapped into, he had anger and something else.
The knowledge, fear.
Yeah, because anger and fear.
People were looking at the future and they didn't see themselves in it.
Yep. Inaros, the cause, was probably a just cause for the Belters, but as Filip found out, Marco really wasn't interested in the cause. Mm-mm. He was interested in himself, and that's really all he was interested in.
Yep. His messiah complex, his narcissism, his megalomania. I mean, Marco Inaros was a very horrible person, as Holden called him, evil. But again, he tapped into something real. Yeah, I'm glad Filip saw him for what he was before it was too late. And I have a feeling that if the show had gone on, we would have seen that Filip started to engage in some of the same behavior that Clarissa was engaging in, trying to make up for the wrong that they had done in the past, like Naomi wanted for him, showing that he had a conscience and that he had guilt for what he had done. And that was something that clearly Marco was never going to experience. There was something very wrong with that guy. That's for sure.
Oh, he was a narcissist of the highest order.
Oh, big time. A psychopath. You know, he could just kill people and he didn't even think anything of it.
It was only how it helped himself. He didn't care about anybody else. I think including his son.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because he even said, you know, if his son had died, he would have felt bad about it, but then he would have moved on and realized that it was all part of fighting for the cause. You know, so I mean, even his son was just a prop for him, and Filip finally figured that out.
This episode was, I think they said 64 minutes. I wish it would have been a little bit longer.
Yeah.
However, there was so much packed in here. I mean, the attack on the railguns, the space battle with Drummer, at the end, the travel union stuff. This felt like it could have been like 2 or 3 episodes of material, yet somehow they compressed it into 60 minutes, 64 minutes, I think it was.
Well, there wasn't any extraneous crap.
There was no filler at all in this episode. This was a great way to send off the series. My hope is that if they don't continue with any more seasons, and it doesn't look like they're going to, that they at least do like what Firefly did, because there are still some books that are left to be done that maybe they could create a Serenity or a set of Serenity movies that could fill in the extra books, because when it ended, I felt like, oh my gosh, you've got this travel union, you've got Filip out there, and on the Rocinante, it looks like Bobby's going to be a permanent fixture on the Rocinante because she was piloting.
Yeah.
And they set up a new kind of family crew on the Rocinante, and that whole new dynamic could be very interesting. It's like, I want to see more of this. This is something I want to see more of.
And we still don't know where the protomolecule really came from.
Or what those red entities are, or we have so many questions. Or that little girl and her brother on the Laconia.
Pet Cemetery kid, yeah. So, I mean, there are so many threads that are left dangling like that I would love to see them have a movie to finish that off. Just, like you said, like Serenity was for Firefly.
Yep. I think they're like more than just one book. They'd probably have to have a set of movies. But if they just did a book, maybe they could get through these with like 3 or I don't know how many books are left. Maybe 3 books left.
I don't know.
Maybe they could have like 3 movies to fill in this.
Yeah.
Or, because I can't do it, because reading is something that I'd have to find time for, and I know you're busy too, but you read faster than I do. You should read these books and then give me the synopsis.
Oh my god, I'll put that on my long list of things to do. I've still got my Doctor Who video that I gotta finish writing my script and get that done.
And Star Trek Discovery starting back up soon, and then Picard starting.
Oh, and the Orville is starting too.
Yeah, the Orville starting.
So I mean, like, I'm gonna be inundated here soon. But I will definitely... I've already read book 1. I read Leviathan Wakes. I actually, a few years ago, had the opportunity to actually see Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham in person and go to basically a Q&A where they talked about the series of books and the TV show and all that. And, it was really nice because they clearly really did a good job of thinking out the world that they created. And it really meant something to them. You know, it wasn't just a paycheck like you get with a lot of these television writers. This was a labor of love on their part. And it shows in the writing. So I really hope that they have the opportunity to take the rest of what's left of the story and make it into either, movies or maybe even a new series. Maybe Amazon will decide that... it's worth making more. Who knows? Yeah,
because you and I were talking during toward the end of the episode. I'm curious for why Amazon's stopping this right now.
Yeah.
You were speculating maybe the ratings weren't where they wanted them. And this I'm assuming it's an expensive show to make because there's a lot of special effects involved. But this is one of the better shows I've seen not only on Amazon, but like anywhere.
Yeah.
This is one of those staple science fiction shows like Babylon 5 was in the 90s, like Ronald D. Moore's Galactica was in the early 2000s, and now The Expanse in the 20-teens going into 2020. This is going to be one of those shows that's remembered, and I can't I don't understand why Amazon's stopping. This is groundbreaking. That's going to be remembered decades from now, and it'll probably gain in popularity afterwards. And I think you mentioned this, that maybe the problem is, like, I haven't seen a lot of advertisements for The Expanse. Maybe people just don't know about this series at all, and it's going to be a cult thing that's going to take off in a decade or so.
Well, I mean, I think part of the problem is that they took over this property from the Syfy channel, and the Syfy channel, I mean, this is going to sound weird, but I think the paywall to get to Syfy channel series is actually stiffer than the Amazon paywall. Because if I recall correctly, I believe the majority of American families have an Amazon Prime membership. So more than half of America has access to The Expanse. However, since the show, the first three seasons were on Syfy channel, I would say the vast majority of Americans didn't have access to that.
I know with us, like on our cable tier, I mean, we use Sling, but it's essentially cable.
Yeah.
We had to go to a different subscription model to get the Syfy channel.
Yeah, we had to purchase a different tier in order to be able to watch The Expanse, which was totally worth it. But, you know, we were able to shift around our subscription in order to do that.
Come up with the extra money.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people just don't. I mean, especially cord cutters.
Well, that's been the complaint coming up with the Orville that I've heard from people is the Orville for the first 2 seasons were on over-the-air Fox television.
Yeah.
And this third season is going to be on Hulu, so you need a Hulu subscription. And I've heard people complaining that, geez, there's a paywall now to get to the Orville.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what that does to viewership on there. I'm sure Hulu is hoping that this actually increases subscriptions. This whole subscription thing is going to come to a head eventually because they are getting way too many services for people to be purchasing them all.
Well, it's getting ridiculous because when the streaming services started, like Netflix and that, the whole point was it's cheaper to cut the cord from cable companies and, let's say, go to Netflix.
Yeah.
Or then Netflix and Hulu. Mm-hmm. Well, now when you add up all the Disney Plus and Paramount Plus, if you're going to watch that garbage on Discovery, for Star Trek Discovery, you start adding up all these services. Now it's like on par or more expensive than cable was.
Yeah, exactly. You know, because, I mean, when we first cut the cord, I think we were one of the early adopters of that. However, that was more of a... you got mad at the cable company. Yeah,
because when we signed up, they gave us a year subscription that HBO came with it. Fine. Then afterwards, like we noticed on our bill, now they were charging us for HBO a year later. Fair enough. So I called and said, could we please cancel the HBO tier? They said no. And I said, wanna bet? And they wouldn't let me cancel the cable tier, or the HBO tier. So I said, well, we're just going to cancel our cable subscriptions altogether. And that person on the phone was giving me the blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, we're done. You're telling me I can't cancel HBO. You watch me cancel HBO. Which is funny because we have HBO Max now, and we're quite happy with it. So this was stupid Comcast.
Comcast can cram it.
Yeah, Comcast was trying to, no, you can't cancel HBO. It's like, the hell I can. In fact, I can cancel your whole service.
Yeah, I remember when that happened, and I was like, holy shit. But you know what? We had Netflix, and we had Hulu, so we made it work.
And then we found out about Sling, and so we got most of the cable channels back by getting Sling at a far cheaper price.
Yep, and a lovely antenna to get the over-the-air local stations. You know, but I mean, now, like, I'm not going to pay for Apple TV and Disney and, however many others there are. Screw that. Like, Paramount, whatever.
I don't know who, maybe rich people in California can afford all that. We pare down what we can subscribe to, and when we want to, like, watch a show on a different service, we'll temporarily cancel, like, looks like for the next 3 months, we're not doing ESPN Plus the next 3 months. We're going to shuffle that over to, a different service, Disney Plus or something.
Yeah.
And I don't know how people can subscribe to all these things. It's way too expensive.
Well, I think some people bundle some of their stuff.
Yeah.
Because some of these will allow you to do that.
I think Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu, I think you can get a...
You can get a bundle of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I've seen people doing, and this, I'm not telling anybody to do this, but I've seen people using a VPN and getting subscriptions in other countries that are far cheaper.
Yep.
Than what we have.
They pay for the service, but they pay a far cheaper price because the service is offered cheaper in the other country.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm obviously not saying to do that. I'm just saying some people do that. But I mean, this whole subscription service model is getting way out of control. Yeah, I mean, it's going to come to a head eventually. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of form that takes.
I mean, we're almost here now because Paramount Plus...
used to be CBS All Access.
Right, and they're pulling all their Star Trek series, at least in the U.S., they're pulling them off of all the services like Hulu and Amazon, and they're just going to be available on Paramount Plus. And I'm talking the good Star Trek, like the original series and the Next Generation and so forth.
Well, screw them, because we have the discs.
Well, right, but there are also people who are using a VPN because those are still available if you're not in the U.S., at least for now. Now, once Paramount Plus goes worldwide, maybe that'll change. But I am not signing up for Paramount Plus to watch older Star Trek stuff. I've got the Blu-rays. I'll watch them that way. I don't know what they're doing. I'm not going to sign up for their garbage service. I'm not going to keep shows like Star Trek Discovery and Picard. I'm not going to keep those series afloat. They're garbage series.
Yep.
They are a blight upon humankind by pushing the worst qualities in human beings as norms. They're pushing racism. They're pushing imperialism. They're pushing torture as an accepted way of doing things. And I am not going to back up that sort of ethics being pushed from a company. I'm not doing it. Paramount Plus is not going to get my subscriptions. I don't care how many Star Treks they pull over there as an exclusive way of watching them. I got my physical media, and I will watch my physical media.
That is correct.
But going back to The Expanse, I know a lot of our channel viewers are Star Trek Discovery, I won't call them fans, but Star Trek Discovery...
Anti-fans.
Anti-fans are interested. And I really think you should try watching The Expanse. I realize, and I'm admitting, Mollie was quicker on the uptake than me, but in that first season, I had to rewatch it a couple of times because at the beginning they were jumping from Ceres to Earth and they were bouncing all around. And I'll admit, I was confused. I wasn't sure who was doing what these characters are. But if you rewatch it a couple of times, things start to fall into place. And once you get through that first season, the series makes total sense after that. And it actually made sense in the first season. It's just, like I said, I'm a bit slow on the uptake sometimes, so I have to rewatch things a few times. I have to do it with books, too. A lot of times I'll have to read a book 2 or 3 times to really get all the nuances. So I would recommend, if you are a science fiction fan and you haven't tried The Expanse because we're now in season 6 and there looks like there was, geez, that's an awfully thick mythos to get through. Now that it's over, I would highly recommend, if you have an Amazon Prime subscription or you accidentally find this online, go back to the first season and rewatch, because the first 3 seasons that were on the Syfy channel, those are my favorite seasons. When Amazon took over, I started waning. I'm trying to say this nicely, but once Amazon took over in that 4th season, it started feeling a little bit like it was going along with the modern fashion of not quite woke, but it was heading in that direction. It never really crossed over, but it didn't feel the same way as the first 3 seasons. However, this last season, this felt like the old Expanse again.
It felt a lot like the old Expanse again. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was much closer to the first 3 seasons than seasons 4 and 5 were.
Yeah. 5 to me was the worst season of all of them.
Well, again, I mean, that was the first Amazon season.
No, season 4 was the first.
Oh,
when they were on Ilus.
I hated Ilus, though.
Yeah, the 5th season was where Naomi was hanging out with Marco and her son.
Oh, yeah.
And that crap just dragged on, and I didn't like that season. I will not rewatch that season.
Well, and again, I mean, I know I've had at least one person, saying, oh, well, there was all this that happened in the books during the season. And it's like, well, yeah, but I'm not reviewing the books here. I'm talking about what they actually did in the television show. Because, I mean, as I've said before, I mean, I can tell when the episode has been adapted from the books for the TV by the original writers, by Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham. versus when it's been adapted by a television writer, because there's a very different feel, and there's a lot more added extraneous drama that has been added.
Season 5, to me, like I said, this episode and the last one of season 6, like there was no filler. It was very tightly. That season 5 had so much filler. I was wandering off looking at like the clock and outside the window at times. Mm-hmm. Season 5 had way too much filler.
Yeah, because I mean, it all depends on what the writers decide to focus on. Like, you can pull different aspects out of the story and make the episode concentrate on those versus others. And it's all about choices when it comes to adapting material like that, minimizing some facts for others. I don't like the way a lot of modern television writers write for TV. It just, this overdramatic, as I would say, crap. I mean, it's schlocky. There's too much added drama that is ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know if season 5 had that. I mean, I honestly would have to go back and look at who wrote the episodes. I'm just saying as a collective thing, I don't want to go back. There was a few good things in season 5. I'm not saying there wasn't. Mm-hmm. But overall, I have no want to go back to that season at all. But I will go back and watch the first 3 seasons of The Expanse. I've watched them at least 3 or 4 times already. I'll go back and watch them again. They have high rewatchable value.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess what I'm saying is, if you're one of the Star Trek Discovery people and, you've dabbled with The Expanse, but especially when Amazon took over, it just kind of seemed like it was a little bit close to woke and you didn't want to deal with it. Go back and watch seasons 1 through 3 because you don't have any of that stuff. Not even close to it. And it's really, really good. And this season, season 6, even though there's a lot of female characters, they refound what made The Expanse, as you pointed out, mostly. And this season's really good. Season 4, it was better than season 5. So season 4 might be worth a watch.
If you say so. I mean, there were some parts of season 4 that were pretty good. However, that guy that was on Torchwood who played the baddie in season 4, it never worked for me. Probably because I knew him from Torchwood. It just felt like he was written too over the top. It didn't work for me.
Season 4, I thought, had some filler in it too, but not nearly as much as season 5.
Yeah.
Because season 5, still better than Star Trek Discovery, don't get me wrong, but that's the worst season of The Expanse in my opinion. So anyway, my suggestion is if you're a Star Trek Discovery person, anti-fan that's watching this video, I would recommend going back and watching season 1 of The Expanse, realizing with the caveat that the first few episodes, it gets confusing when they're popping between locations, what's going on. So you might want to rewatch the first few episodes a few times to try to pick this up, because I had to. Mollie didn't. She picked it up the first time, but I had to watch the first 3 or 4 episodes 3 or 4 times. And then I finally figured it out, and then, Mollie filled in the pieces that I missed, and then from that point on, I was fine. So,
well, I think that's world building, though.
Yes.
World building, there is always a ramp up to establish things so that you can finally start concentrating on the story itself. I mean, I think the thing is, with things like Star Trek Discovery, there should be minimal world building at this point.
Because they have Star Trek.
Yeah, because it's been established.
Decades of Star Trek.
Exactly. So when you start going against decades of canon, that's a problem. That's a stupid thing to do.
Why are you world building? You already got a world. Just go.
Yeah, well, I won't get into that any further because that just comes back to they don't even care about the world. They're just using the name and they just want to write what they want to write.
Yeah, they're building their own crap and just slapping the Star Trek label on it.
Yep, even though it's total garbage. It may as well be a knockoff from an unnamed country.
Yeah. Some overseas knockoff, we'll just put it that way.
Yeah, there we go, an overseas knockoff. There are so many things that were done wrong with Star Trek Discovery, but we'll do a retrospective on Star Trek Discovery probably when this season is over, because I can't imagine there would be another
hopefully
season of this
is
crap.
The last season of this crap.
Yeah.
And hopefully this is the last season of Picard, too, because we're planning on grudging, fludging. We're gonna suffer with you on this season 2 of Picard, because I think that they're going to do massive damage to the continuity of what was established in The Next Generation.
Well, I mean, the thing is that in order to be able to coherently complain about it, unfortunately, you have to have watched it.
Yep.
And I finally came to the realization in my life that my superpower is bitching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch that crap, and then I'm going to bitch about it in a way that only I can. So,
I mean, I'd rather not complain, but at the same time, I grew up, and I'm like everybody that I'm sure is watching this who are Discovery not likers. We grew up watching this stuff as kids, you know, and then we grew up going through college or early work life, and we watched the other iterations of Star Trek. And what they're doing now is it's so sad. I don't. That's the thing at the end of this Expanse episode, when Filip was typing his mom's name and Naomi and Holden were together talking, there was actually a warmness inside of me, a happy feeling, a optimistic feeling about where they were leaving the story.
I was so happy for Filip.
Yeah,
I was so happy.
I was like, I had a warm
because
thing.
He's getting a second chance at life.
Yep.
And he fucked up royally. He's done some really horrible things, but it's obvious that he really regrets that, just based on his interactions with his father and just seeing the indifference that his father had toward his first officer in particular when she died. But that's the thing. The way Marco was behaving as callous and that's how Star Trek Discovery is when I watch it. That's their norm, is like Marco. That eating up inside of you dark feeling. Yeah.
Whereas at the end of The Expanse, this last 5-ish minutes of it, like there was a warm feeling inside of me, like a lifty feeling, a happy feeling, a feeling I used to get with shows like Star Trek.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you mentioned Marco and the way he's just in, that's how Star Trek Discovery is. It's like your gut gets all tight and you get all nervous, and at least I do. And it's just, it really shows me the worst pieces of humanity, and it makes me sad and angry, and there's no out. It's a pessimistic view. There's nothing there to like, you know, you go to work in the real world all week, and then it used to be you'd watch Star Trek and go, there's a better future up ahead, or people are good. You know, people are good. There's just sometimes bad situations get dumped on them. Mm-hmm. And then you watch Star Trek Discovery, and I can't imagine somebody working all week and then coming home to watch that, and it's like you just got punched in the gut by your job all week, and then this thing on the streaming service like doubles up and gives you the double smack in the gut. And I don't know why anybody would want to watch that. That doesn't uplift you. It doesn't make you feel better. It doesn't make you question the world or your, you know, any sort of larger picture questions about me treating other people, maybe reevaluating my politics. None of those questions come up. It's just a punch in the gut every week when you watch one of these Paramount Plus shows.
Well, yeah, because there's no striving for anything better. Like, I mean, I hate to keep harping on the first season of Star Trek Discovery, but just everything that happened in that first season was so disgusting as far as their regime change and making excuses for setting up a puppet dictatorship.
Mutinying being the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many things there, you know, that bomb that they placed with that body when the Klingons were collecting their dead after the battle was already over. Just so many things that just disgusted me about that show that were absolutely 100% wrong. And I don't know how anybody can watch that and think that that's a good show teaching good values, because it's not. And, you know, I mean, it's not like I'm a religious person or anything, because I'm not. But the values that show was teaching people were evil.
Yes. As evil as, like I said, Holden called Marco evil.
He was.
And Marco Inaros and the way he did things, that's how Star Trek Discovery characters work. Just like Marco was, except at least in The Expanse, although you appreciate the cause he might have been subverting or taking advantage of, but he was still this selfish piece of garbage narcissist. And that's what every character on Star Trek Discovery is. But on The Expanse, Marco, you're supposed to be finds distasteful and repulsed by.
Yeah.
But on Star Trek Discovery, those same behaviors, you're supposed to, oh, no, that's Michael Burnham or that's whoever. That's a great character.
Well, they all act like they're in high school. Like, that's the emotional level of the characters on that show. And not just the teenagers. I mean, the grown-ass adults behave that way.
I felt at the end of this Expanse episode, as I said, when Filip put his mom's name into the computer as the owner, I guess the owner of the ship or whatever.
Yeah.
When Naomi and Holden were talking, there was a warm, happy feeling inside of me.
Well, there was hope for the future.
I have never felt that watching Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, and I tried to watch Lower Decks, and I know a lot of people think that's okay. It's not meant for me, but then I don't like Rick and Morty, so I don't like that style of storytelling, so maybe it's just that simple. Mm-hmm. And I tried to watch Star Trek Prodigy. That one doesn't work for me either, but that one doesn't at least make my stomach all churny like the Picard and Star Trek Discovery do. They're not ripping out eyeballs or anything like they do in those other two shows.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we only watched the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, maybe it got worse.
It could have gotten worse. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, there's nothing uplifting about Star Trek these days.
Because the Expanse left off on the Belters, the Martians, and the Earthers. They finally were all coming together and to work together to move our solar system forward. Mm-hmm. And that was a very, I mean, maybe it falls apart in the next book, I don't know. But that was a very happy place to leave things, like we were moving forward.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I look at our current world, not only different countries, but in the United States, the different political factions, one day we're going to have to sit at a table and come together and fix things, because we can't keep doing in our politics what we're doing now, where every group thinks they're right and they think all the other groups are evil.
Yeah. We
can't keep doing that because we're never going to get anywhere. We're just going to destroy ourselves. And the Expanse showed the solar system was destroying itself unless those 3 factions of humanity came together and started working for a better future.
Well, demonizing the other never leads anywhere good. I always say either you have a negative view of humanity or a positive view of humanity. Either you think people are inherently good or inherently bad. And I think that dictates your outlook on life. If you think everybody is bad, then of course you're going to be very negative. You're never going to work with other people because you won't trust them.
No, and that's what this is about. When Drummer and Avasarala were talking at that table, and then Drummer pointed out that, why is your word we can take on trust, but not mine? In the real world, that's what we're dealing with now. The political factions, especially in the United States, because I don't affiliate with any political party. I mean, I'm like the Three Stooges Moe, and I want to take Larry and Curly and smash their heads together because they're screwing up in different ways.
Yeah.
I'm tired of all this bickering and going in different directions, because all that's happening is our whole country is getting destroyed. I mean, I don't know if this country lasts 20 more years the way we're going. We have got to reach a moment where we come working together, we stop demonizing the other, and we start implementing policies that help everybody.
Yeah.
Poor people matter. I'm not saying let's crap all over the rich, but you can't elevate the rich and forget about the poor. These are all human beings that we have to take care of on some basic level.
Yep.
And at some point, we're going to have to come to that realization, and that's at the Expanse at the end. That's what those 3 factions realized, is they're all going to have to work together if they want to live together and move humanity forward.
Yep.
And that was profound to me, because that's what, in 2022, that's what we're living through right now. We've got political factions tearing us apart, demonizing the other, and nobody wants to trust anybody else. Nobody wants to work with anybody else. In fact, these political factions, they would rather do nothing and watch the country fail just so it makes the other side look
bad.
Yes. And I'm getting sick of that, and a lot of the American public are getting sick of it.
Well, I mean, that's basically what Marco...
And it's not just one party. Both are doing it, just in different ways.
But, I mean, that's what Marco did with Ceres.
Yeah.
When he left them with only enough food, water, and air for 3 weeks, and was dumping them on the inners. He was leaving them a humanitarian crisis on purpose. That's despicable behavior. Human beings shouldn't be pawns in somebody else's game.
No, I'm not saying give people handouts. And it's interesting because the Expanse, it was interesting they had in the earlier seasons. They showed that Earth was this welfare state where most people didn't have jobs and they lived on basic income, and that society was kind of stagnant and rotten. Then you had Mars in the early seasons where they were all working for a collective future and everybody would serve the cause somehow. Mm-hmm. That was very interesting. Then you had the Belters, who they were supplying a lot of the raw resources for the inner planets, and the inner planets are Mars and Earth, if you haven't followed the Expanse series. But they got dumped on. The Belters were considered like subhuman things. Yeah. And I look at our country now and the working poor right now in this country, and oh my gosh, I mean, the Belters, I mentioned this last time, the last episode we reviewed, but in 20 years from now, people are going to look at the Expanse and the Belters in particular, and they're going to look at how the working poor are in this country, and they're going to see that that was an allegory. I don't know if it was intended in the books to be that. My guess is not. But the TV series that they went ahead and they spun, I think in the TV series it absolutely was a purposeful allegory for what's going on right now.
Yeah. And not just right now, because, for instance, when Mars fell, that was a lot like when the Soviet Union fell back in the 90s. They had military equipment that was being allowed to fall into the hands of bad actors.
That's how Marco bought his military.
Yeah, and exactly. So, I mean, that was a mirror of something that happened in real life. There were senators from the United States who went to Russia and tried to help them shore up what was left of what they had so that it would stop falling into the hands of the wrong people. Mm-hmm. You know, and as far as I recall, I believe that was a bipartisan activity that was going on within our own government, because they recognized how important it was to work together to make sure that everyone was kept safe. And I'm not sure that we would be able to do that now.
We don't do anything anymore. I mean, we have a healthcare crisis. Hey, you know what? I know there's a group of people that don't believe in Medicare for all. Fine. Maybe that's not the answer. What is the answer? I'm open to any ideas on fixing this medical crisis that we're dealing with right now, but the only solution I hear proposed from people is Medicare for all. Let's try that. The rest of the civilized world has some sort of national health care on some level. But we can't do that because there's a faction that says that's the next step into communism or whatever. Okay, so what is the next step? I mean, I don't know. We can't continue like this. If it's not Medicare for all, what is it? Propose something. Don't just drag your feet. Propose something.
Well, I mean, plus, Canada isn't a bunch of communists. The UK isn't a bunch of communists. France certainly isn't a bunch of communists. Neither is Germany, nor Australia. They all have national healthcare systems. They're different. They aren't mirrors of each other, but none of those countries are communist by any stretch of the word.
That's a problem right now. And just so it doesn't seem like I'm picking on one side of the aisle, because as I said, I dislike both of our political parties. You cannot get rid of the police departments. Law and order must be maintained. If you want to somehow transform them into something that might be more helpful, I'm open to that, but this abolish the police, you can't do that. We turn into the Wild Wild West if we do that.
Well, here's the thing. You know, I used to work in a social services type field. When poverty goes up, so does violence.
Yep.
That's it. The number one risk factor for violence is poverty.
And all of the jobs in this country that are useful have gone away. We've turned into a retail industry. The problem is, if you don't make anything, you can't just keep buying stuff from other retailers. You've got to make something at some point. This country needs to make stuff again. This turned into a political discussion. We probably shouldn't do that. I do not align with either party. I despise both political parties in this country on the same level as Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
You just wait. When the other political party gets into power soon, you're going to find them to be just as big as screw-ups as the ones that are in here right now.
I've been watching them screw up for the last 20 years.
Decades, yes.
And in fact, longer, because I remember NAFTA, too. And that was a bipartisan thing.
That was one party pushed it through the legislature, and the other party who was in the executive branch signed it into law.
Bill Clinton.
Yep. That was both parties' fault.
Both parties did that. And that decimated our manufacturing sector. So blue-collar jobs, they were destroyed by both parties working hand in hand. When George Carlin said, when the two parties get together
and work bipartisan,
and do something bipartisan, that's when you're really going to get screwed.
Yep. The common person is going to get screwed over. So to bring this back to The Expanse, that's why those first few seasons of The Expanse really worked for me.
Yeah.
And this last season did too, with Drummer and, her being put in charge. Mm-hmm. It reminded me a lot. I don't know. I don't know how many people like Babylon 5 who watch this, but Babylon 5 had a storyline where the Minbari race had these three castes that ran their world. You had the warrior caste and the religious caste and the worker caste. And their ruling body was called the Grey Council, and it had 9 people on it. And it had 3 of each caste. Through most of this time, you had the warriors and the religious caste fighting each other. You had the warriors wanting to have wars, the religious people talking about prophecy and all that. And after all these wars and stuff that were going on between them, who cleaned up all of the mess? It was the quiet worker caste.
Yeah.
So at the very end of the war, the civil war with the Minbari on Babylon 5, I believe it was Delin. It's been a while since I've seen this, but I believe Delin, she reset up the Grey Council, and she let the worker caste, I think it was have 4 representatives on the Grey Council. So the workers they had more representation than the other 2, because the workers were the quiet group that was being crushed upon the entire time these 2 elite castes were going at each other.
Yeah.
And that reminded me a lot of when Holden stepped down and put Drummer in charge of that travel union, because it's about time that the workers of the solar system, the Belters, had some real control.
Well, when you look at representation in Congress, the vast majority of people in the House and the Senate are very, very wealthy. Some of them worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yep.
And that isn't
Which makes me wonder how they can identify with the common person at all.
They can't.
You got that much money, how do you know what the common person wants?
They don't know what it's like to choose between paying your electric bill and buying food, or putting gas in your car, or trying to figure out how to keep your 12-year-old, 15-year-old car on the road.
And that's both parties. I'm not picking on...
No,
you
it's
look
both
at
of them.
Each party and they're full of these rich pieces of garbage that don't give even if they wanted to give a damn about a common person, they have no way of identifying with a common person, and that's both political parties.
Yep.
So we should probably try to tie this up before... These are interesting topics that maybe one day we'll do larger videos on.
I'll just say this. I was born into the Belter class, and I will die in the Belter class.
Same here.
And
my family, my father before me, my father and mother were worker class.
Yep.
And their parents before them were worker class.
My father was in a union. I have a feeling yours probably was too.
Sure was.
Well,
I should say I think so. I never really asked about that part of his job, so I don't know for sure, but he was a steel worker, so I'm guessing he was in a union.
You mean one of the steel workers union? Yeah, I would assume so. Or the auto workers union. That was also a possibility as well for your dad. I've never worked in a job where I was union eligible.
There's not even a union where I'm working.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, even the protections that our fathers enjoyed in their workplaces,
which was good medical benefits.
Yeah.
Making sure that pay was at least a fair wage to, support a family and buy a house and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. Our parents were able to do all those things.
Yep.
And the medical benefits that I had as a kid, thanks to my father's union, are so much better than what we have now.
Yet somehow unions, if you bring it up now, apparently that's Soviet Russia. I don't know how, or Nazi Germany. I have no idea how people make those leaps. It's the same way they make the leaps with Medicare for All, but I don't want to get into those sort of weird discussions, because you talk about one thing and then it turns into all of a sudden you're Stalin, Soviet Russia. And it's like, how can you even talk to somebody
because
like
they
that?
confuse communism with authoritarianism, and they are not the same thing.
I don't even want communism. I like personal possessions. So I'm not somebody who wants to go communist. But I'm not going to make the leap that a union is going into communism. I'm not even going to try to make that leap in my brain, and I have no idea why anybody else does.
I don't know. Well, I do know, actually, propaganda, because this goes back to union busting in the early part of the 20th century. They were painted as a bunch of communists. Our lovely government did that. And it was in tandem with the corporations.
I mean, I get there have been some big unions that have had a bureaucracy of corruption.
Yeah.
And I get that. And those unions should definitely be looked upon as not something you want to elevate yourself up to.
Well, that's why there's laws against that stuff.
Right. But there are other unions that actually didn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, unions that actually looked out for their workers and made sure that they had proper medical care, proper, paid time off, family leave, that kind of stuff. And the fact that that's becoming a scarce commodity these days is just, we've regressed so far from where this country was 70 years ago, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago.
So you watch The Expanse, or I do, and growing up in a working class family like I did, I can very much identify with the Belters, because I see what we're going through right now in the real world in 2022 as being very similar to what the Belters are going through, under the boot of the machine, and having absolutely no voice to say, but I matter. What about what I need? That's what the Belters are being stuck in. And they finally reached a point where one fanatic took military action and it all spun out of control.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to leave it there. If we don't try to fix this in a non-violent way, just watch season 6 of The Expanse to see where we're going. And I don't want to get kicked off of YouTube, so that's all I'm going to say.
Yep.
So I guess my summation, this was a fine way to end the series. I wish the series wasn't over. I hope there's going to be follow-ups. But this was a really good send-off. This was one of the better send-offs of any franchise. It was a good episode, and I highly recommend people watch it. What about you?
Yep, same here. 2 thumbs up for me. Even though some things were left unresolved, I'm hopeful that we will get some sort of movie or something in the future that will take care of that and answer those questions.
So I guess from there, we'll just maybe close up the video here by saying, thank you all for watching. And don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment.
Yeah, and if you're just here for The Expanse, check out some of our other videos. Don't know what you're interested in, but, obviously we're going to keep working on Star Trek Discovery. We're going to be working on Star Trek Picard. The Orville's coming up, and I'm going to finally get that Doctor Who revisiting the New Year's special completed and get that video up. So if Doctor Who is something you're interested in, stay tuned for that. And who knows what else we might decide to work on. Obviously, the Joker video that I made is not like most of the other videos. The Matrix Resurrection, we reviewed that too. Just as things come along, we'll just review more stuff and talk about more things. If there's anything that you think we should check out or that you'd like to get our take on, if we already are fans of it, just drop it in the comments below and we'll look into it. I'm always open to new things. Obviously, if I wasn't open to new things, I would never have started watching The Expanse to begin with.
Yep.
So I'm always open to new recommendations. So if you have any, please drop them in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in and watching our videos and listening to what we have to say. I appreciate all of the comments that people make. And I look forward to bringing more stuff that people will enjoy and comment on now and in the future. So thanks for watching.
Take care.